Hey guys, so welcome to episode 2 of Tyler's Techniques. Today we're going to talk about what I did on Lake Seminole. So Lake Seminole was an interesting event. It was a crazy event. Um, I really I felt I found a lot of stuff going into the tournament during practice. Um, I found a lot of fish offshore that I was fishing mostly deep, I shouldn't say deep, but deeper cuts in some of the offshore weed flats, mostly in 8 to 10 feet. I was looking for those little depressions, and the main bait that I was targeting through that with in practice was a crankbait. This is a DT6, and when I got a little bit shallower, I would throw this DT6. The bait I did most of my damage on in practice was actually a Berkeley Digger 8.5. Same kind of red craw color, but I was also throwing a DT10. So it all depended upon, the depth to bottom and the depth to weeds and exactly what depth range I was trying to target. But in general, I was throwing a lot of crankbaits out in open water over submerged vegetation, and I was looking for those deeper holes in that vegetation. With the really cold weather we were having, I figured those bass were pulling out into just those little bit deeper spots. And that worked really well for me in practice. Come tournament time, I didn't quite find them there. And I think it has to do with the fact that in practice, every day it was bright sun. We had, clear bluebird skies almost every day in practice. And come tournament time, it was really cloudy. We even had, rain and wind. And I think all of that combined to move the bass a little bit out of those deeper areas that I was targeting. So this bait turned out to be not quite as effective during the tournament. And actually, I didn't catch anything on this during the event itself. I threw this a lot, and I just never got bit on it. But the other bait that I threw a lot in practice was a jig. This is just a simple half-ounce jig, green pumpkin, red craw type color. And I was using this mainly targeting deep weed lines. So there was matted milfoil and hydrilla. Actually, I think it was a lodia. I'm not really sure what it was, but it was some really thick vegetation, and it formed some really sharp weed lines out in almost 10 feet of water. So I was targeting those outside edges with this jig and flipping it around there. And, I caught a new personal best in practice, which was a 21 and a quarter on that jig. And I'm throwing this on a 7.3 heavy fast FX custom rod. I really love this rod for throwing jigs and worms. It's got a ton of backbone. You can really set into them. You can pull them out of the cover good. And it's sensitive enough that you're going to feel even the subtlest bites when they are just barely nipping at the claws on this. In the tournament, I did get bit a couple times on day one throwing this jig. I just didn't keep them pinned, and a couple of them I set the hook and they were basically pulling the craws off and pulling the skirt down. So it just didn't connect on the tournament day. It was effective, it was working, but it just wasn't getting quite the number of bites, and it wasn't quite getting me what I needed. And then on day 2, I threw this quite a bit as well. Didn't get a single bite on this on day 2. But one of the things that I made a different change on day 2 was I actually started punching more. So rather than working the outside weed edge there in 10 feet, I started working back 2-3 feet into the weeds. And that change was crucial, because when I changed, I went to a 7.4. This is a heavy plus mod fast. FX Custom rods. It's a great punching rod. It's also my frog rod, but throwing that with a 1¼ ounce Texas rig with a Reaction Innovation Sweet Beaver, pretty standard punching rig, nothing complicated there. But by moving back into the weeds just a little bit, I got bit a lot more on this than I was on the jig. So I don't know if that had to do with the sunlight, the temperature, or what, but my fish, they moved just slightly, and I didn't find them until day 2. But day 2, I was able to connect with a really nice 21¼ inch largemouth on a submerged tree that was just encased in vegetation. But again, it was just that couple feet back from that steep weed line. And yeah, I threw this a lot. Caught a couple fish on this on day 2, and it was really, really effective. And then the only other thing I caught fish on day 2 was pretty much the same thing that I think everybody was throwing, which is, you know, the fire craw jackhammer. You know, it was the craziest thing. I pull up on a point with some weeds. First thing that goes through my mind is, I bet everybody has thrown a fire craw jackhammer on this point. I did it anyways, and I caught a keeper. So just goes to show, just because you think everyone else is doing something, you might think something's beat up a ton, throw at it anyways, because new fish are pulling up, you know, fish are moving, and fish got to eat, so they'll bite something. But yeah, that was pretty much it for me on Seminole. I kind of wish I had figured out where my fish had moved a little bit earlier on day 1. Maybe I could have put something together and you know, got a few more bites, and then I could have dove right into it in day 2. But you know, that's what happens sometimes. Fish move, you got to relocate them, and you just hope you do it in enough time. So yeah, that's it for day 2, and I'm heading down to Lake Murray in a couple weeks. So when I get back, we'll do up another one of these, and we'll see how that tournament goes. So until then, tight lines, guys. Love you. See ya.